Hello and welcome to the big picture. The third strategic dialogue between India and the United States in the last 2 years is concluding today in Washington, it is anticipated to make a major leap in the relations between the two countries on several fronts. The 5 ministers high-powered delegation led by Foreign Minister S.M.Krishna is expected to clinch several important deals during this dialogue. It is evident from the way the US has been wooing India for the last couple of years that it expects India to not only be its key bilateral partner but also play a major role in international affairs, whether in acting as a balancing factor in Asia vis-a-vis China or in Afghanistan, and also take its line on Iran, to name a few. India, while enjoying the active wooing by the US, is also trying to balance its interests and keep its multilateral options open with countries like Russia, China, Iran, and so on. Americans are also disappointed with India as it has not delivered as much as it had expected following the nuclear deal. The critics of American administration feel that they have oversold the relations with India. India, however, has emerged as not only an important trading partner with the US, but also its most important military partner. What are the various factors working as the leaders of the two countries finalize various deals in Washington? We will look at all this while trying to analyze how India is balancing its global interests even as it engages America. To discuss and analyze all this, I have with me today Mr. Ronen, former Indian ambassador to US, who played a key role in working out the nuclear and strategic relationship with America during his tenure in Washington between 2004 and 2009. Nilotpal Basu, Central Committee member, CPIM, whose party has consistently opposed such close relationship with the US. Ajai Shukla, Strategic Affairs Editor at the Business Standard, and Mr. Sheshadri Chari, Convenor of the Foreign Affairs Cell of the BJP, will be joining us soon. Welcome to all my guests. Mr. Sen, coming to you. This strategic dialogue, one, it is said that it is about various issues, but what America is looking at India is to, it's a business deal. It is, that they want a business deal. All other things are sideshows. Is it the way India also looks at it?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think broadly speaking, if you talk of the strategic picture, at the cost of oversimplification, I would say there are 5 aspects. One is in terms of the large regional and global security structure.
Right.
The second aspect is that on nuclear, as you said, nuclear cooperation, defense cooperation.
Right.
Those were the two, those were agreements which were concluded, in the sense of one after the other.
Right.
In June, we had Mr. Pranab Mukherjee and his counterpart signing the Defense Framework Agreement in June 2005, and July was the initiation of the civil nuclear deal negotiations. Then the third is broadly on security cooperation,
right,
which is on homeland security, counterterrorism, cyber security, that broad framework, which has intensified tremendously. And then lastly, there is the economic dimension. And all these are related. So you say the
economic dimension is not really the priority. It's the last.
No. I would say they are all interlinked. Because, without civil nuclear, and you wouldn't have had the easing of end-use restrictions, the preferential treatment in terms of defense purchases, certain technologies. Then, without, for instance, the defense cooperation agreement in a particular framework, unless you look at it in a particular framework, you cannot get, look at them in silos. But to say that, like for instance, a lot of people are saying that, the United States having initiated, the lifting not only of the civil nuclear deal, which is much criticized,
the sanctions,
but it took the lead before the civil nuclear deal of lifting the global sanction. That
Right.
means making it possible to cooperate with Russia, with
France.
all countries in
All
the world.
countries.
All countries. So that global regime has been relaxed, as a result of which, without one single megawatt of any foreign power being installed, including Kudankulam, you have more than a doubling of our capacity already. So you have to look at it in that broad framework.
So they are disappointed that though they were responsible for lifting all these sanctions, they are not getting all the benefit which they thought they should be able to get.
I tell you one thing. In September 2008, when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh asked President Bush, he said, "Look, I'm going to sign some of the agreements with France and maybe with Russia, and maybe this will happen before we conclude the arrangements with the United States." He said, "Go ahead." He said, "Look, there is no quid pro quo." And in any case, when you're talking the US companies, you have to remember one is a wholly owned subsidiary of a Japanese company, Toshiba,
Right.
and the other one is with Hitachi. So
they're not really American companies.
No, they are, but they provide employment there. So it is not a quid pro quo in that term.
So Nilotpal, Basu, there is no quid pro quo, but still your party feels that this kind of close cooperation is dangerous to India.
No, first of all, I feel very amused at your excitement over this third or whatever round of this strategic partnership dialogue. And I was little amused with Ambassador Sen also. First of all, he was waxing eloquent about the advantages of nuclear deal.
Right.
Now, about signing accords with the Russians and the French and all that, and he's talking of doubling of capacities. Now, I think where from he has imported this arithmetic, it is not clear to me that the doubling of nuclear power generating capacity has happened since the nuclear deal. It is really
Mr.
news to
Sen,
me.
would you like to?
I would just say go by facts, right?
What are the
I'm
facts?
not getting into it. Is the fact it has doubled.
The fact is it's doubled.
Not the capacity.
Ah.
The capacity has remained the same. I said the generation has doubled, and I'm talking of facts. So let's not get into
Generation of nuclear power.
Yes, without increasing a single megawatt of foreign capacity. You have not had Kudankulam, which is the oldest one, which I was also
Nilotpal?
instrumental
No,
in.
I am telling you, you see, frankly speaking, that this imported nuclear, both feedstock and technology, even a small side of the margin calculation will show you that it will cost us 3 times more than what power we are having, what is the cost of power that we are having. So I think Americans know it very well. You see, it is Dick Cheney's brainchild, and they knew that they could not sell the stuff in United States. They have not commissioned any nuclear plant since the 80s, and therefore they funded Cheney's campaign, and therefore it has to be sold, and they sold it to Manmohan Singh, and they were greatly excited. Mainly, you see, they wanted this deal to have the sanctions that they imposed post Pokhran II,
Right.
because that was hurting their business of defense equipment. I think Ajai will be a better person to actually enlighten on this, that they were saying that their own satellite Israel was taking away all the defense contracts, so much so that India became the a bigger importer of Israeli arms than the Israeli army itself. I mean, they were the biggest suppliers. So
Ajay,
they had to do this. And you see, so far as the Americans are concerned, they will only choose for those deals which are win-win for them. There is no equality in this relationship. And I tell you that now there is a new shift in the American strategic thinking. If you have seen what Hillary Clinton have said about this new Asia-Pacific reprioritization of their geostrategies, and also Leo Panetta's speech. So it's very clear that they want an access to Bay of Bengal. for two reasons, gas and oil in this region, and also to contain China. And they want India to play host, and they want India, to quote Leo Panetta's expression, linchpin in the American regional strategic game plan.
Right, Ajay. One thing is how Nilotpal Basu and his party and the way people who think in the similar manner look at it. Is this situation what has developed post 2008, as Ambassador Sen has told us? Is it going to be beneficial? Is India playing that balancing act, very well as of now?
Look, without taking an ideological position
Exactly.
on any of this, without getting involved, as happens in this country, in the day-to-day interactions and the back and forth between the two capitals, at the geopolitical level, when you take a step back, what is happening is the world's sole superpower reacting to the rise of another superpower by allying with a third balancing power.
Right.
We have to understand that. And without getting
That is-
ideological,
that is a fundamental truth.
that is the fundamental truth. And, it's for us to now see how we play this interest
Right.
to maximize in our favor, which is what your question to me
Absolutely.
really is. Now, what we have been tending to do is to say talking to the US is good or talking to the US is bad, and having a very polarized domestic debate.
Right.
But the fact is that it is possible to talk to the United States without closing the doors on the other options that are
It's very
available to
interesting.
this country.
S.M.Krishna goes to China, comes back, goes to US, and now he's going to Cuba.
Exactly. I mean, this is a fairly apt summary of how India is playing its foreign relations. This concept of multi-alignment, of talking simultaneously to multiple powers, of leveraging the weight of all those relationships in talking to one other power, this is a game of skill.
Absolutely.
And this is a game which India, I would say, has so far managed to pull off.
Yes, Nilotpal.
No,
Don't you agree with what Ajay
I
said?
generally tend to agree with Ajay that,
Yes.
you see, therefore, we should not assign any special status to anybody. We have absolutely no problem in India engaging with the United States. But the point is, for example, you were saying pulling it off. Now, for example, this gas pipeline from Iran, which was coming, we cancelled it at American behest. And then subsequently, first we were apologetic about it. Now we are quite bland and saying, now same about the imports from oil from Iran.
Okay.
Now, you see, when India goes to BRICS and together with BRICS they react, their position is somewhat different from India, what position it takes on its own in the United Nations General Assembly or other fora.
Okay.
So, I think that balancing is a must, and which by assigning this so-called special role of the strategic partnership is deluding ourselves.
Okay. I mean, I wouldn't ask Ambassador Sen how we are balancing, because he's been one of the players in retaining balance. Let me go to Mr. Sheshadri Chari. Sheshadri Chari is the convener of the Foreign Affairs Cell of the BJP. Mr. Chari, looking at what is happening in the US right now, so many ministers going there and talking to various figures in the United States. You think India has been able to balance its its requirements by the way it is dealing with the US and other countries, or do you think that India is overplaying with the US?
See, this is not the first time that India is entering into a strategic dialogue with the United States.
Right, this is the third one.
We have been continuously doing it. But and the US has always been saying that we want India as a partner in the strategic outlook.
Yes.
But what is important is we should not forget, when the US says we want India as a partner, when we talk of partnership, does it mean the same thing for both India and the US is the most important question.
Yes.
I think there are very few occasions where I would agree with Mr. Nilotpal Basu, but this incidentally is one occasion where I have to agree with Mr. Nilotpal Basu. The strategic dialogue in the entire gamut of the world happenings have changed.
Yes.
The economic strength has transferred from west to east.
Right.
China and India are two very importantly rising powers.
Right.
And all along, we have not been on the same page with the US on a number of issues.
Right.
Iraq, Iran, Burma, Sri Lanka, Nepal, even in the case of China. I mean, we don't want to be led by the security architecture that the US thinks the world should have.
Absolutely.
I think India has a role to play, a very strategic role to play in the region.
Right.
And if we have to contain China, we should have our own anti-access strategy as far as the Indian Ocean region is concerned. We need not go by what the US thinks.
Right.
And when it comes to democracy, all along, US has been supporting Pakistan, all the terrorist regimes in Pakistan. When we were involved with Bangladesh, it was the US which
Mr.
sent the
Chari,
7th Fleet.
No, Mr. Chari, the
Therefore,
question.
no, we should know. What I am trying to say is,
Right.
we should also take the realities of the situation into consideration. Just as we think we require the US more, the US also requires India equally
much.
more.
Okay.
Equally important.
Okay, we will
should be
continue.
able to play our leverages.
Right. We will continue this discussion. We need to go into a short break now. We'll come back and continue this discussion and look at other issues which are before us. Please keep watching. I'll be back soon. Welcome back. We are discussing the Indo-US strategic dialogue and seeing how India is able to balance its interests. Mr. Sen, now there is one view of Nilotpal Basu and his ilk saying that we are trying to be excited, getting overexcited about the whole thing. But Mr. Chari is saying that there is a need for balancing you think that balancing is taking place now? Or, see, for example, as far as the military exercise is concerned, the number of military exercises that India and US has done in the last few years, US has not done this with anybody else. Why this over-enthusiasm to have this kind of a military relationship with the US?
Well, first let me tell you, just to get it straight, because
Yes.
I think people have become, I think some comments were made which is not fair. And I was not only ambassador to the United States,
You're
I
ambassador
was
to China.
associated with the first break to China.
Yes.
At a time when, believe me, there was a lot of domestic debate and there was opposition also
Right.
at that time. I think we did the right thing.
Right.
When you're talking about military exercises, it just happens that this dialogue, while this dialogue is taking place in Washington, our ambassador in China is greeting 4 Indian naval warships, making a friendly port call after exercise with China in Shanghai. This is coincidental. It's not.
What is coincidental?
This.
The number of military exercises.
No, what's happening in Shanghai with this, I'm just mentioning in coincidence. But I spend most of my time in when you're talking about defense, nuclear, in Russia. I was ambassador in Russia for longer and in the Soviet Union for longer than I can remember from the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s. So what we are talking about, let us be very clear as Indians, all of us are Indians, that we are talking of how do we promote India's interests,
Right.
and not look at it from somebody else's point of view, whether it's ideological or otherwise. And this process, I will say, the latest process began, to put it in perspective, with the next steps in strategic partnership announced by Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee
Right.
and President Bush.
Right.
All that follows, the nuclear and all the other things which follow, was in that perspective.
Right.
And I don't think that we should get in, whether it's partisan or ideological viewpoint. We have to all think of what we are doing to promote our interests as we see it. I would also say, like when you mention the nuclear deal, let us not have any illusion that nuclear energy is going to form the basis
Of
of
the
energy in
requirements.
India. It is not going to. What I was trying to say is that it's to be seen, one is a goal in itself, but it's also a key to opening a door
Other doors.
which will open other windows and doors of
Nilotpal, Basu,
opportunity. That's all I'm saying.
your opposition is basically ideological. You don't want to look at the realities. Ideologically, you are blindly oppose the US. That is the charge. He is pointing out, we are equally in good terms with China, or at least trying to be in good terms with China, with Russia. Then why this single-minded focus to oppose whatever happens with Russia, with America?
No, we are not saying that.
Yeah.
We are not saying that. First of all, I mean, I think that media generally and the so-called strategic experts are very unfair to the left in the country, that you don't give us the credit for refusing to toe the American line and go to Iraq, which was almost finalized. Ambassador Sen, in fact, knows better than me what happened, and it is because of the left-spirited attempt, and history proves that we were correct in stopping India from joining that misadventure in Iraq, which Americans also think. Second point is that about nuclear energy, what I am saying is it has unlocked the door. See, today we are reviewing over the decline of the Air India and all that. 72 aircrafts that Boeing sold to us is thanks to this. And the number of armaments because Americans wanted. You see, the moratorium was hurting them more than it was hurting us, because they were not being able to sell their armaments to us. And you see, if you see the flow of investment, for example, during this period, what has happened? And today America is not in that position. I agree completely with Ambassador Sen that it has a long background. It's not only with the UPA dispensation. It started with Narasimha Rao, if you see actually. Then NSSP came, and then there is a continuity. And we say that, you see, to feel enamored by this so-called allowing us to sit on the high table, I mean the kind of jargons that we see, that is wrong. You see, today world is increasingly becoming multipolar. There are many players.
Exactly.
And India should play its card in an independent manner and balance out. Say, we had this bravado on Iran oil. Now see the figures, what has happened. So therefore, what we are saying that even more so today, where the world is looking much more multipolar, and where the American economic power is on decline,
Ajai,
we should not be indulging in
He's
this.
talking about multipolar and things like that. I think Defense Minister Antony the other day made it, I think when Panetta was here or just after that, he made it clear, we are looking at a multilateral security architecture. What does it mean? Does it mean that India is working on a multilateral security, so that it is not getting tied up only with
alliances
and various alliances, right?
India has never got tied up in alliances.
Yes.
I mean, the closest we've come to an alliance was with the Soviet Union in the early 1970s, and that was for a specific period in history, for a specific mission, let me call it, which was successfully executed. But let's also remember one thing. I mean, all this talk about India standing alone and India being this thing. Let's remember in 1962, when we got roundly thrashed by the Chinese, we went running to the United States. We were asking the United States for fighter squadrons to come and defend Indian skies.
Right.
Let's also remember that in 2005, when India and the US signed the Defense Cooperation Agreement, that was the same time at which China made its maximum concessions on the border dispute. So there is no question.
This kind of balancing is necessary to keep different forces.
You play one against the other, to put it very simply. And it is, I think, to take an ideological position and say the United States is bad or the United States is exploitative, in the global arena, everybody is exploitative. Everybody is maximizing their interests. India has to do it as well. And I think that our growing engagement with America, the number of military exercises that we are doing, the number of delegations. There's not a week in New Delhi
Exactly.
when you have a when you don't have
Five-
a high level
five
visit
high
from
level,
this
yeah.
thing. I think that to see that as a negative thing is, I think we are unnecessarily looking for skeletons or looking for ghosts in our own backyard. There's nothing that prevents us from intensifying relations with China. We are in fact
We are, in fact.
intensifying relations with China. Russia remains an important partner. I think that the days when we have to see it as an and/or relationship
Is over.
well, they're well gone.
Mr. Chari, last words to you very quickly. The days of and/or relationship is over. Does the BJP also recognize this fact, or is it just, would it continue to oppose for the sake of opposition any of the, steps which the government takes?
No, not at all. We are not opposed to this government. In fact, India and US are two very strong democracies. We want engagement with the US. But what I am trying to say is, ultimately, at the end of the day, India's own security interests and strategic involvement in the region is more important than the agenda that the US sets for India. If we give this kind of an impression that we are being led by our nose by the US strategic thinking, that will be very bad, and that is the impression that we are giving to the people.
Okay.
So what we are trying to say is, let us deal with the US just as we have been dealing with, but we should forget that it is neither a unipolar world nor a bipolar world. It is a multipolar world. Eurozone is a very big area for trading center. China is a very big production center. India is a very big consumption center. We are the masters of Indian Ocean region, and we have got a responsibility towards the countries around the Indian Ocean region.
Right.
So we have a role to play, and we should play that role. That is what we are trying to say.
Mr. Sen, just very quickly, he says, are we playing that role, not getting into this single thing, and multilateral forces, playing our game, balancing our interests? Is this happening, and do you think it will continue to happen? If the more we get closer to America, you think this will not affect our interests?
I don't think we should have that kind of lack of self-esteem. I think the world is changing, but India also is changing.
Right.
And today, India is not what it was 10 years back or 20 years back. Today, most people are looking at a world which is going to come in a very near future, I think. Maybe it will be postponed if we don't get our act together, the way we are going. But even if we don't get our act together, maybe it will be postponed for a little bit longer, but we will emerge as one of the 3 largest economies in the world.
So on this note, we have completely run out of time. We need to get our act together, according to Ambassador Sen. Nilotpal Basu warns that there need not be such brouhaha about the relationship with America. Anyway, that is where we need to strike a balance also, I presume. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks to all my guests, Mr. Sheshadri Chari, Ambassador Sen, Nilotpal Basu, and Ajai Shukla. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue on The Big Picture tomorrow at the same time.